Welcome back, everybody, to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I'm Devin.
And I'm Nick.
And that was perfect.
I just wanted to make it, I just felt like you were like really like pulling the cart on that one. And I just wanted to like give it
One last push?
Yeah.
Yeah, keep
It's
us
really,
going downhill.
Slowly trample over you.
Yeah. If I don't get run over by a cart by the end of this episode, I quit.
It's like in Hercules in the Disney movie when he just like picks up the mule and then just keeps on going. It's like that.
Okay.
I would never let you get trampled by a cart.
Please.
Do it.
Okay, great. No, I actually I have some things I want to talk to you about for this episode.
Oh, okay.
I always pre-think of a hook. So I'm not just like being like, oh, that was awesome. We had a great day.
All right, give me your hook. Let's go.
Okay, so my hook. Hook. You like art, right?
Yeah. I enjoy art.
You have paintings up in your apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So what in art is appealing to you? What like catches your eye the most?
You son of a bitch.
This isn't. I'm sorry. Okay, this isn't like a therapy.
To trap me.
No. This isn't a therapy question. This isn't a philosophy question. It's just like we went shopping for all these paintings, or most of these paintings, hanging up behind us, to like thrift stores and stuff like that. I was like, we like this one, like this one. So like, what is like? I like this piece of art.
Yeah, I think with art, what's great about art is that it's so subjective.
Of course.
Right? Like very much beauty is now holder, all of those things.
Yeah.
But people can love art for different things because there's so many different types of art. Like from performative to modern to sculpture to architecture to all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, when I think of art itself, I think very much of like contemporary modern art.
Okay.
And that's what I generally gravitate to.
Yeah.
I'm not a big like technical guy unless it's someone that I really enjoy as to like why their art to me is so dynamic.
Okay.
I mean, I think of someone like some big artist like Pollock.
Yeah.
Right? Like his big thing was like splatters.
Yeah.
And it's very cool. And like aesthetically, I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
His his technique was kind of the first big artist to have done that. His wife, also an amazing artist. I think of Rothko. I love Rothko.
Mm-hmm.
But Rothko is also just like shades of color and like a two-toned kind of painting. And it's like when I don't want to say the novice, but like just like someone walking by would be like, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but it's kind of one of those things where when you sit in front of it and you allow yourself to be enveloped in the painting because they're so large, you kind of feel overwhelmed by the colors and you start to have like feelings and you tie that to emotion. And you have this, I think art is supposed to bring out different levels of catharsism almost, like kind of have these moments with these pieces.
Yeah.
And again, like not everything's for everyone. Like I think Monet is overrated. Like fuck that.
Yeah.
And like a lot of impressionism I'm not a big fan of, but I understand I understand one, the technical variety in that and the discipline in that. I understand what that grew into. I mean, or even looking at something like Hopper's Nighthawks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So simple in the sense of, but I think it's the kind of tone and the story that you create around it and this feeling that you gravitate out of it that you're just like, oh, that's what makes it so dynamic. That's what makes it so personal to everyone who looks at it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I like about art.
So like if you were picking out a piece, what would you be looking for in that piece? Is it something that is like, is it the subject matter? Is it just what speaks to you? Is it the colors? Is it the lighting? Are there specific aspects of art that you look for that you enjoy, or is it a case by case or a piece by piece situation?
I think it's more a piece by piece.
Yeah.
I think that it's funny because there's a piece by Miro which Brian really loves.
Yeah.
And it's like this is very strange, like constable is supposed to be the thing, and it's like this cartoonish head, stick body, and this like kind of like Mickey Mouse hand, and it's wild. And Miro is kind of a strange artist in that sense of like normalcy, but it is fun and it's dynamic, and I enjoy that. But I think if I'm searching for a piece, it depends on what I'm searching for. Like if I'm looking for a statement piece, if I'm looking for something minor. But I think it's more like when I went to the Old Town Art Fest.
Okay.
I fell in love with these three individual paintings, but they were kind of like paneled. So they were very much like three that kind of incorporated into one.
Oh, I think you were telling a piece of the story before, yeah.
Yeah, and so they all centered around different levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
So your subconscious, like all these things, right?
It's very on brand for you.
And I loved it. And so altogether, it was like $12,000, and I was like, I don't have $12,000.
Yeah.
But it just attracted my attention, and I loved it, and I loved what I felt about it, and I loved like the way that it was, created. And so with that, I was like, oh, this would be great. I'll find space for it.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, if I'm furnishing something, I think it's different. I think I have a lower level of standard depending on what it is. But if there's art that I fall in love with, or if there's art that really, for some reason, attracts me or means something to me, I'll make room for it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think it's just more so, I don't think I look for something when I look for art. I haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah.
It's just more so like, what do I see when I'm out? What is it that like really pulls me in,
Yeah. No, I totally get what you're saying about like, if you see something, you'll make room for it. And one of, I'm not going to say biggest regrets in my life, but like one of the things that I wish I had done was, at this bar under the Addison Brown line called Cork Lounge. Mm-hmm. Great bar, has a pool table and a shuffleboard. Great beer. They always kind of hosted artists on their walls. And there was this one giant painting of like a horse head. And I was like, I don't know why, but I really like this. And I want it. I never bought it, unfortunately. But I get like having that like sensation of like, yeah. And I think I get that feeling now about tattoos, oddly enough, where I'm like, yeah, I want that piece
totally
on me.
Well, it's funny. One of my friends, she's a painter. She doesn't really sell her art or stuff like that. It's more of a like relievement tool for her.
Okay.
And so a lot of times when she's like going through and trying to like combat certain things, like she'll go
process
and she'll paint.
Stuff,
right, exactly. So she had painted me a picture, and I don't say picture, but like a piece, and it was gorgeous. And it's a lot like a Pollock. It is kind of dynamic, and there is a lot of like splatter and dynamic brushstrokes and things like that. But what I liked about it was not only that sort of the colors behind it and kind of that sort of vibrancy, but also her story of being like, I came home and I did this and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to get too like, I mean, that's a gallerist, right? Like a curator will very much like really drive the story of a piece. And I think there's some like trivialness to that where you could very much be like, this painting was by, right? But I think there's also a very like true and like heartfelt reason why people paint things.
Yeah.
And I think if you can connect with that story, that can also drive home your connection to the piece.
Definitely.
And like every time you pass that in your home or whatever it might be, you understand what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of pieces in like the contemporary wing of, the Art Institute that I still remember the first time I saw them, you know what I mean? And like, you just get to kind of relive that or remember that when you see them again and things like that, where you're just like, this is amazing.
Yeah, get put back in time of when you were, like where you were in life when you first experienced this painting.
I mean, like when I went to London by myself the first time, I spent 3 hours in the Tate Modern.
Yeah.
Because it was just, there was so much to see and there were so many things. And a lot of times people will just kind of like run through museums and like, other museums, fine. Art to me is a little bit different because I think that you need to sit with a piece. Yeah. There's something that draws your attention. Like I think that you really need to like sit with it and really kind of do that for yourself.
Yeah.
More so than just like, oh yeah, I saw Dali's lobster phone, which fun. I don't need to look at that. But like then I walked over and I saw, Klimt's Woman in Gold, or I saw Jones's or Kuhn's, whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think it's all subjective, but I think that's kind of what I really try to take out of when I interact with art.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So from there, I'm gonna step over into our subject for the day,
nice.
And ask you, what do you know about color theory?
Oh, not a lot.
Okay.
I think like secondary, tertiary, things like that. As far as like,
yeah, those are words that I'm going to be using today.
Thank you. In the sense of like what matches with each other, what kind of like can play off of each other.
Yeah.
But other than that, not a whole lot.
Yeah. I think people know more about color theory than they think they do.
Okay.
But a lot of, and I want to say this coming from myself as well, that I think a lot of the knowledge of color theory is very surface level as well.
Sure.
I have a very hard time doing this, but I'm going to call myself an artist in this moment.
You are an artist. What the fuck are you talking about?
As an artist myself, as an artist myself.
Yes.
There we go.
With confidence.
Ooh.
From the diaphragm.
As an artist myself.
Thank you. Lords and ladies.
Yeah, that's how I had to do it. I had to be in a character to do that. Wow. So hopefully this episode gets sponsored by BetterHelp.com.
But also look at the things behind you.
Well, I only did 2 of those.
Sure, but you get so much recognition for like Somageddon, like
I guess
all of those things and all of your tattoos that you design and all of these things. Like plug your shit because you are absolutely an artist.
Okay. So as an artist,
correct.
I thank you. I like have a little bit more deeper knowledge of color theory than Everyman Joe.
Absolutely.
But I realized how much is taught just as a regular person going through art class of color theory, but then also like how much I knew and discovered myself, and what like researching this topic, a lot of things clicked for me. It was like, oh, like that's why these things that I know how to do work, because of this aspect of color theory. So
is Roy G. Biv involved?
Kind of, I guess. It's on the color wheel. All right, so we're going to talk about color theory.
Okay.
This is going to be a very brief, condensed version of this subject.
Sure, yeah.
Because you could teach a whole college course on color theory.
Yeah.
Between what it is and the history of, it's a lot. And it's really fascinating. So what is color theory? It's just kind of simply the science and art of using color. So it explains how humans perceive color, how the visual effects of how colors mix, match, and or contrast, what messages colors communicate, and it can help explain like methods used to replicate color.
Okay.
So that's very basics.
Like a Home Depot paint.
Yeah, kind of, if you go to the paint wall. So there's a couple different components of color theory. You have the color wheel, which I mentioned just very briefly. Mm-hmm. And this, I'm sure everyone, most folks have seen. It's literally a wheel, and you have your 9 colors. Okay. 10 colors on there or so. And it's used to describe and teach color theory. Any elementary and whatever art class you go to is going to have this color wheel on there. You have your primary colors, which are red, yellow, and blue. Your secondary colors, which are orange, violet, and green. And then your tertiary colors are yellow, orange, red, violet, blue, green, and yellow, green. So we have these uses of primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, being your primary colors are the colors that you can't necessarily create using other pigments. Your secondary colors are what you get when you combine different combinations of your primary colors. And then your tertiary colors are what you get when you combine a primary and secondary color, which is why your tertiary colors have the 2 color names. So like yellow, orange.
Got it. Yeah.
Is what you get when you combine yellow and orange. You have colors that are associated with coolness, like cool colors.
Yep.
So that's going to be your violet, blue, and green. These are associated with like overcast days, bodies of water, and cool nature things. Not like the sun wearing sunglasses cool. Or like a gecko smoking a cigarette in a leather jacket cool.
I'm sorry. Have you drawn that before?
No, but I might.
There it is.
Because I'm an artist.
Inktober's coming up, baby.
It sure is.
It's going to be great. Mm-hmm. Drink your juice, Shelby.
Yeah, just let me guzzle this bourbon.
Yeah.
All right. So you have these cool colors. And you also have, on the opposite end, the warm colors. You have your yellow, orange, and red, which are associated with daylight, sunset, warm nature things.
Yeah.
And this warm versus cool colors just tends to lead to chromostereopsis. Chromostereopsis.
Okay.
And a form of color harmony. I go into what chromostereopsis is a little later, but quickly, briefly, just a quick little first thing that comes up on Google. It's a visual illusion that occurs when certain colors are placed alongside each other, making it unnecessarily difficult to focus on both colors. The illusion is due to the respective wavelengths stimulating different areas within the eye.
Interesting.
And I'll go into like what that all is.
Okay.
In a little
cool.
bit.
I was like, I have some questions.
But we're gonna jump into color harmony.
Okay.
And that is harmony, as we know, is the quality of forming a pleasing and consistent whole. So like in music, when you harmonize and you have all these nice pleasant notes, it sounds beautiful. We can have that visually as well,
right.
Where different components are coming together. So this is a visually engaging and pleasing to the viewer. Mm-hmm. What's up?
Nothing.
What?
Pleasing, a consistent whole.
Pleasing and consistent whole. Did I say a consistent whole?
Doesn't matter.
WHOLE,
whether
asshole.
I'm pleasing and you have a consistent whole, or whether it's a pleasing, a consistent whole. I mean, both are great.
One whole.
Right, WH.
WH.
Right. W.
You're an asshole.
Well, that's the other one.
Yeah.
Come on. If you can laugh every time I say fist operation, I can laugh when you say pleasing a consistent whole, okay?
Pleasing and
consistent.
Consistent.
Both are funny.
Whole. All right, so this is going to be visually engaging.
Thank you. Yeah, it is.
And pleasing to the viewer, not their whole. Maybe their eye hole.
There it is.
So this is an important part of having a nice piece of art or a nice visualization. So if there is no harmony being presented, then you're most likely going to either have a very boring subject or very chaotic subject, because the brain will reject understimulating information and not find this piece of art that only has like one color or whatever very stimulating. Like, no, fuck that, I'm not going to care about that. But then it, on the other end, the brain is going to reject things it doesn't recognize or understand. So if there's no cohesiveness at all, no recognizable pattern, the brain will be like, overstimulation, get me out of here. And like, I understand like there is some art pieces that are just a red stripe or whatever in a piece, but there is some sense of harmony to that.
Sure.
If it's just like a value from like black to white, are you gonna be enjoying that as much?
Sure.
Is your brain gonna be fed enough interesting information to be like, this is what I want?
Well, it's interesting. So like I talked about Rothko, right? And those are kind of tones and blurred, and there's structure to it. But there's the one by I think it's Klein. Don't quote me. I think it's Klein. But it's this vibrant blue, like it's got to be about 6 feet of a canvas. What's so powerful about it is that you can't see any brushstrokes in it. So it's just a solid blue, but it's so electric and vibrates almost, and you just sit in front of it, you stand in front of it, and you feel so overwhelmed by this color.
Yeah.
And it's so appeasing, yet overstimulating, yet, just so exciting and chaotic all at the same time. And you're so, fuck you. And you're so, warmed by that.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things where, again, people will walk by and be like, I don't get it, and like it's confusing to me, and so I'm gonna move on. But like if you sit with it, I think that's something else. And there was another piece, and I don't know the artist at all. I saw it in the Art Institute once, but it's a big, large canvas. It's all black, and then there's this thin, like rust colored stripe starting about like 3/4 from the top all the way down.
Okay.
And a little bit of like an opening at the bottom.
Yeah.
Again, like to Brian, he was like, what the fuck is you know what I mean? And I get that, but I think there was just kind of this like intrigue behind like, what's the orange? What's the rust? What's behind the black? Yeah. What's the, you know what I mean? Like,
what did you paint
is this
over?
open? Right. Yeah. Like all of these, this kind of like just to make you question and curious and all these things. And like, it's just done with 2 colors, like without any pattern, without anything. And just kind of like, whoa, you know what I mean? But I think to your point where it's like, it can be boring. It can be very boring if I just paint a canvas with a color. Yeah. Right. But depending on, I don't know. I think there's technique that can like pull different things out.
It depends on if there's purpose behind the action. And again, like you said before, it's all very subjective. And that's kind of the tricky part of color theory is that all art is subjective. And so going back to it, I think having a purpose behind, I'm going to paint this whole canvas this blue so carefully that there aren't any brushstrokes. That is my art. Yeah. That is my piece. I'm going to have this whole black thing, but what I'm feeling is having this bronze line or copper, whatever, rust line through it. I think that is done more with intent. Yeah. And which drives intrigue.
Which I also wonder if you saw that not in a museum setting. Right. Do you have the same reaction? You know what I mean? If I go to TJ Maxx or like Marshall's or the bargain bin and find it in the stacks, like, do I have the same
speak
sort
to
of
you as much?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Yeah. Anyway.
So we have this craving harmony within our pieces. Yeah. And this harmony becomes a dynamic equilibrium, balancing the extreme unity and the extreme complexity. So the unity being the boring information, the complexity being the chaotic. Yeah. And so we can find this harmony through a few, quote, basic formulas. And these are formulas based off of a 12-part color wheel of the colors I read off earlier. So these are kind of what you mentioned before, but just putting a name to it. There are the analogous colors, which are the 3 colors that are side by side. These will go well together. Okay. You have complementary colors, which are 2 colors that are directly opposite of each other on the wheel. Sure. And then you have the triadic, which is a form of an equilateral triangle on the color wheel. And each point on that triangle, those 3 colors will go together.
Oh, okay.
You also from there have like a tetradic, square, split complementary, and other formulas. But the 3 that I listed are the main ones that people usually use in their pieces. And nature provides so many examples of color harmony, especially of the like complementary and analogous colors. Got it. If you look at one of the examples during my research, was like if you look at a leaf of a plant and it has a few different shades, like we'll call it 3 different shades of green, they all look nice. They're all analogous to each other. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so the next part of color theory that we're going to talk about is color context. So this is where the chromostereopsis comes in. So the color context is going to be describing the behavior of color in relation to other colors and shapes. Okay. So just as a reminder, the chromostereopsis is a visual illusion that gives the impression of depth in a 2D image. It's just a a visual illusion.
Sure.
You know those first two words I said. So part of this color context using that illusion, especially historically, was to provide that illusion of depth. The painters and even people who were making stained glass art for cathedral windows and whatnot would have a darker or cool colored background against a brighter or warmer foreground subject. And that gave depth to these old paintings and windows.
Yeah.
Without having any perspective, any 3D perspective drawn in there. And this also talks about how the contrast of a color will vary against other colors. So if you can open up your mind eye and visualize this for a moment. The example that I have would be take a red square with a black background. That background will amplify the red and make the red square seem larger.
Sure.
On the other end, if you take the same red square and move it over to a white background, the red will seem smaller and duller.
Okay.
It's not going to be as vibrant. And we can go even further where the interacting colors can affect their values, saturation, and even their warmth and coolness.
Oh, okay.
So you can take a purple rectangle, and this one could be perceived more red tinted against a cooler purple background. But then if you move that same purple rectangle, it could look more blue tinted against a warmer purple background.
Okay.
Were we all able to visualize that?
Yeah.
Everyone nod. Great. Thank you. I see all your nods. So it's really interesting that just like from there, this can explain how colors interact and behave with each other can skew our perception to the point where having 3 colors can look like 4. And my personal example of this was my childhood bedroom that my brother and I moved down to from the upstairs to the downstairs bedroom. My parents painted it blue, like it was a kind of a light blue.
Okay.
And the way the light came in the room through the window, it looked like each wall was a different shade of blue, but it was all the same paint.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of all what color context is talking about.
So they always say, paint a little bit of a wall.
Yeah.
Sit with it throughout the day.
Yeah, see where the light hits, painted on different walls. Yeah, yeah. So that's a little fun fact. Now you know about my childhood.
Now, is that also, I mean, even thinking about like painting like a interior, why we prime beforehand is because if we don't, the paint behind it can be so
that can
affect the color of the
definitely. And that's why too, when you're painting interior rooms, you'll have to Google this to visualize it because I don't know all of the tips and tricks, but like if you paint like your walls a dark color, it'll like elongate the room.
Yep.
You paint your ceiling, it'll shorten your room. Like all that stuff. Like that's part of color context.
Yep. I mean, that's why like accent walls became such a big thing
100%.
in like the early 2000s was to be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So with those 3 things, the color wheel, color harmony, and color context, that's where color theory stops being so simple.
Okay.
So this subject is infinitely complex with components both in science and art and just a messy mixture of both. Mm-hmm. And to the point where even today there are still parts of it being debated and discussed, and all because art is so subjective.
Yeah. Like
this is what I see as this color, and this is what you see as this color. I mean, like I'm slightly colorblind. My dad is almost 100% colorblind.
Are you really?
Yeah. It's tricky.
Got it. What can't you register?
It's mostly just like shade differences.
Oh, okay.
specifically like with greens and browns, because that's where my dad is really bad. Like he'll be like, "Oh, this is a nice like green sweater," and it's like, "No, Dad, that's brown." Or I forget if it's like
okay, the other way. Okay,
yeah. Like this one time, I think it was like my first year of college. He obviously dropped me off with my parents or with my mom, and he hung up all my clothes in my closet, and he was like, "Oh, look, I organized them by color for you." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, Dad." But I didn't have the heart to tell him that, like, when he left, I rearranged it to actually be arranged by color.
That's so sweet of him.
It's one of my favorite stories about him. It's so silly. It's so cute.
He's gonna know now.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get into a little bit of where all of this debate of color theory began.
Yeah.
Again, very briefly, it's a very long and complex subject. So the earliest text on color theories is from the book or text scrolls. I don't know. It's called On Colors.
Okay.
It came from ancient Greece. Okay. Whatever the hell they had. Probably their Kindle.
Probably.
And this was either written by Aristotle or his students.
Okay.
We're not really sure. We initially gave it all the credit to Aristotle, of course, but later on they were like, maybe it was the students. I don't know.
Probably more likely.
And this text explains all the observations of color in nature. So all colors exist on a spectrum of dark and light. And there are the 4 primary colors, not just the 3. There are 4 primary colors that all come from the 4 elements.
Okay.
So like if you take a plant, and the leaves are green, but the roots underground where it doesn't receive light are white. So therefore, the sun provides color. The heat, the fire, the sun, that element provides color. That is one of the primary colors, 4 primary elements.
Okay.
And that's where the spectrum of dark and light come from. And from the text, quote, "Darkness is not a color at all, but it is merely an absence of light." So that's where they, end quote. So that's where they, that part of color theory starts off.
Got it.
And this theory really remained for quite some time until, of course, one Isaac Newton gets his hand on color theory. So his book, Optics, spelled with a K, was...
Why a K?
Well, it's Opticks.
But what? We don't know why it went from a K to a C.
I don't know. It's fucking Isaac Newton. Hit on the head too many times.
That apple bitch.
Yeah. So he published Optics in 1704, and instead of a natural artistic approach like the Greeks kind of took, he went straight science.
Sure.
Makes sense. It's on brand for him.
Right. Just a little.
So Newton discovered that white light is a combo of all colors across the spectrum. Mm-hmm. He discovered this through a very simple experiment of shining light through a prism. And from there, the light splits. You can see this on a Pink Floyd album.
Amazing.
So through his experiments, though, he also discovered that he could recombine the colors that were split by the prism. He could recombine them to recreate that white light again.
Okay.
By combining these spectrums of light, these sections of the spectrum of the light, visible light spectrum, you could combine them to go back to being white.
Okay.
From there, he blended different colors on the spectrum to create new colors that didn't exist in the initial rainbow. So we do talk about rainbows.
Rainbows.
Roy G. Biv.
Roy G. Biv.
And that's what is when you take your prism and shine a white light through it and it splits into those visible colors, you're getting that rainbow, that Roy G. Biv rainbow.
Got it.
To show his discovery, he decided to make the color wheel. He wrapped the color spectrum along a circle, creating the color wheel. And he did this to help predict the result of mixing two colors, which we have seen from the primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. And he decided to split it up, though, only into 7 asymmetric sections to show the strength of the color on the spectrum.
Okay.
And he also decided to do 7 because of 7 days in the week, God, all that bullshit.
God. Tell me more.
Yeah, let me tell you. So then from Newton, we move on to another important player in the game. And this is Wolfgang von Goethe, who wrote Theory of Colors in 1810.
How do you spell that?
Goethe?
Uh-huh.
Goethe.
Mm-hmm. Goethe.
Goethe.
That's there's a street in Chicago. Everyone pronounces it Goethe.
Oh. I haven't been on that street. I don't think it exists.
But you hung out in Gold Coast all the time.
Oh, God. Yeah.
The Viagra Triangle was your place to be.
I was the center of it.
Everything revolved around you.
All right. So Wolfgang was a German poet.
Mm-hmm.
And he...
Barely even know it. I had to. I thought about it. That's why I waited too long. And then I was like, I just got to do it.
Got to get it out. All right. So this Wolfgang was a German poet. Mm-hmm. And he wanted a more human-centered analysis of the perception of color.
Okay.
More artistic approach. So he had experiments that measured the eye's response to certain colors. And through his own version of the color circle, which included different primary colors to Newton, he had while Newton was more RGB, so red, green, blue, oriented. Wolfgang was more CMYK, so cyan, magenta. I'm going to cross out the K. He was more CYM, so cyan, yellow, and magenta.
Okay.
And with his own 3 primary colors, he believed that he could mix all other colors on the spectrum. And the results of his experiments showed the effects of after images and led the way for more optical illusions.
Okay.
Other artists used his work to create their own very famous optical illusion pieces.
Like MC Escher.
Yeah. So like the main differences between Newton and Wolfgang were that Newton thought that color was purely a scientific measurement of light, and Goethe believed it was more of a subjective experience. And so with Newton, you can make white light by mixing different colors because light mixes in an additive way, while Goethe believed that you can make the color black by combining paints because these pigments and paints mix in subtractive ways, so subtracting waves of light.
Makes sense.
So from these two, you have a bunch of other different theories coming out and other different experiments coming out. And people trying to come up with different ways of expressing the color wheel, how many colors are in the spectrum, trying to define color theory. And you have Tobias Meyer. He came up with a color pyramid, essentially color triangle, color pyramid in 1775. Philip Otto Runge, he had a color sphere in 1810. Michel Eugene Chevreul had a hemispherical color system in 1839.
Okay.
And then we get to Albert Henry Munsell, who had a color tree in the early 1900s. Now, all of these things that I'm listing, they all had their own flaws with presenting all of these different colors and all of these different values, because the spectrum is so broad when you get down to little minute wavelengths. And,
yeah.
But Munsell with his color tree, and it's not like an oak tree with color. It is a very it is a very dynamic, odd, irregular shaped thing.
Okay.
That I guess was just best described as a tree. Mostly because with the way he set it up, you had your base of essentially black, and I'll get into the more details of this, going up and spreading out with its branches per se, to all the very different colors out there. That's where I think we get the tree.
Got it. Okay.
So Munsell, he decided that he needed to use 3 dimensions for his drawing, for his conception of the color wheel and color theory. He needed to have hue, value, and chroma, or saturation. And so these dimensions are actually still used in a lot of representations of the RGB color model. When you go into Photoshop or Paint on your Windows computer, and you see like the square or even the wheel of what you want to select for your color, you'll see that you're going to be able to select your hue, value, and saturation. Yeah. Saturation might be another slider on some programs, but you know the deal.
Did you ever play Hues and Clues?
Blue's Clues?
Skidoo. No, Hues and Clues. It's like a big board, and it has a kind of a color spectrum on it, like different squares and stuff.
I think I tried playing this at your place once.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah. So then you'd be like, my first clue is apple.
Yeah.
And then you have to be like, okay, is it a red apple, is it a yellow, is it a green apple? And then you kind of have to place like the closest, and then you would be like Honey Crisp. And then you would kind of place which hue closely relates to the clue.
Honey Crisp, yeah.
Correct. Those were bad examples because that varies so much. But you try to be a little more specific.
Well, I have a very specific picture of a Honey Crisp in my head.
Very true. But that was the other thing, is that like it was so subjective. Like, or it was like grape, and then it was like Concord grape. And people were like, oh, my version of Concord grape is so rich and deep and purple, but someone else might be thinking more it's red.
Red, yeah.
Someone else might be thinking lighter purple.
Yeah.
So, like, it is interesting.
Yeah. I would probably go more purple because, like, Concord grape jelly.
That's what I think of.
Yeah. And so from his own works, we have a quote, the desire to fit a chosen contour, such as the pyramid, cone, or cube, coupled with a lack of proper tests, had led to many distorted statements of color relations, end quote. So, like I said a little bit before describing his tree, the low value colors have less visible colors. So the low value, I'll say hues, have less visible colors. So these are mostly black.
Sure.
So like you would have like a dark brown, a dark red. There isn't much difference between black and almost black red, you know?
Yeah.
So that's going to be down at the bottom, with not a lot of branches.
Sure.
Sticking with the tree.
Got it.
And then you go up the tree, and some hues have more mixable options. So like more colors, there are more colors between red and white than there are between yellow and white.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So that's how he kind of built up his 3D model of his tree.
Got it. Okay.
And interestingly enough, Munsell actually used a mathematical syntax system to list the colors in his tree, which indicated the color's position within the model. Yes.
Is that what we get like when I think about like when people do like graphic design or things like that, like they type in
the hex code?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
It's not exactly.
Okay.
We've advanced it to what our systems will be using today.
Sure.
But it's very similar to how we identify colors for programming, like in the hex code and stuff like that.
Got it. Okay.
Like FFFF is white, you know.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
It's like I don't know why F. But it's just where the value is. There's no color. It's just
okay.
Well, there is all the color. It's white.
Thank you.
Color theory. But of course, like with all the other models that I listed, there are still a lot of inconsistencies and flaws. But this tree system helped build a bridge between art and science that hadn't been seen previously.
Okay.
And from there, I'm stopping at the early 1900s, just because from there, we have centuries of information and opinions to go over and process.
Yeah.
We could dive into using light and color theory to make a product more appealing with advertising.
Yeah.
Because that's a big part of it. And there's just so much more to go into. But I'm just going to stop my college course now.
Okay. Nice. So here's my question.
Yeah.
We can only see X amount of spectrums with the human eye, correct? Yeah. Isn't it like, did you say 7 or 8? Something like that? Isn't it like a small amount?
On the visible color spectrum?
Yeah.
Well, we can see...
up to...
We could see Roy G. Biv.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of the breakdown of it. I don't remember. I go back a couple episodes and tell me what we said. But you can see anywhere from like red to violet.
Sure.
And anything in between.
But can't birds see like 30 different... Isn't their spectral range so much...
Yeah, each creature will probably have a different... I mean, like, there's that dog filter on TikTok where it's like, oh, we can only see, like, yellow and brown or whatever.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah. And I know, like, their visible spectrum is different than ours. And, like...
Yeah.
There are some creatures that are able to see ultraviolet. And, like, that's what... To us, it might be a bird, actually. To us, their plumage isn't very vibrant, but to them, if you flick on an ultraviolet light, wow, it's super bright and colorful.
Right. Do you ever think we get to the point where we'd want to see the world like that, or do you think we want to see it the way that we can naturally see it? Like, do you think ultraviolet brings a more expansive view of the world and a more truthful view of the world, or do you think it's just different?
I think we've evolved to as much as our brain can compute.
Okay.
And until we have a moment in... Well, it's going to be crazy. Until we have a moment in human existence where we're not having to deal with the mundane, the survival aspect.
Sure.
Then our brain might evolve more. But I mean, the brain's only going to evolve as much as we need it to.
Sure.
And can allow it.
What was that movie where they took a pill and they can like unlock
Limitless?
Yes.
No. We use 100% of our brain.
Like, it's called speed.
Right. Y'all just have fucking ADHD. No, we use 100% of our brain. It's not like, totally. I'm only using 10% of my brain. It's like, no.
You use all of it.
Yeah. Constantly everything's working. We're just a sack of meat guiding this brain pilot. This conscious that we don't understand, even though it's in our own fucking skull.
And that's color theory.
Like I said, it's such a vast and complex subject matter that I wanted to keep it brief, wanted to cut it short. Yeah. And I know I've even been dragging it on for a little bit longer than I wanted to. But it is... I think it was just interesting to see, like, oh, this is why things work. This is why I like this art.
Is there an aesthetic that you typically are drawn towards when it comes to color in art or pattern?
I love contrast. Any type of contrast is huge for me. Like that's I was going to change my shirt and I was like, I can't do black and black. I have to have this white and black, or if it was a different color in black or different color in white. Like, I don't like monochromatic stuff. I don't like the analogous formula. That bothers me. I mean, it works. It's pretty. It has its uses. Yeah. But if I could, I'd rather just do complementary colors all day, every day.
You're like a newborn. They love contrast.
Love contrast.
Love black and white. Mainly because their eyes haven't fully developed. But
well, maybe I haven't fully developed. I'm only 30.
And that's for next week's episode.
Next week we'll be on a couch, and Nick will be wearing a tweed jacket.
Correct. We're actually going to give you an ADHD test next episode.
You know? And the episode after that, I'll finally be on some
right.
And it won't be as fun.
We're going to go into our experimental series. Yeah. It's going to be great. Well, thanks, Dev. I think to your point, I think color theory and color in general is such an expansive topic to dive into. Like, to your point of like pigments versus visual versus, even on the computer now. Like, there's so many more elements and layers that we could explore. And that's why you're saying like it's a whole college course because every day could be a different lesson within color theory itself.
Right. And it's really hard to look at it on a computer screen because your computer might not be giving you the right colors.
Now, can you mix colors on a computer, or is it more so you just kind of pull the spectrum of what you want?
Yeah. I mean, with certain art programs, you certainly can. Is it necessary?
Not really.
Not really. Not when you can just pull any pigment, any hue that you want.
Yeah.
Straight off of your color selector, It's not like you have a little tray of colors that you only have like 6 colors to pick from, like when you had the paint by numbers books when you were a kid, you have infinite amount of colors to select from.
Because I think if I'm on the computer and I'm drawing or coloring, and I have a yellow, and I want to add a little bit of brown to that yellow, am I able to do that, or is it on the wheel?
No, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say it one more time.
No. You son of a bitch. All right. Well, thanks for listening to me about color theory. Everyone, check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And what do you know? _podcast. It's underscore, not understore. Underwear, under there. Also, check us out at Twitter or X at WDYK _podcast.
Yeah, baby.
Like, subscribe, 5-star. Tell us what art pieces you like.
Oh, I like that.
Let's get engaged. Yeah, tell us, drop us some art pics that you like, different artists that you like to look at.
Yeah, send us your pics.
Yeah. Art pics only.
That'd be cool. I'd love to see what people like really are drawn towards.
Yeah. That'd be really fascinating, actually.
Awesome.
Please do that. That's cool.
Yeah, do that.
Do it. You won't.
Do what you won't. Okay. Thanks, Evan. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, bye.